Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, Lil Wayne names Missy in his top 5 rapper list. Again, my thoughts on the new Black Star album, No Fear of Time, produced by Madlib, and the mother of hip hop and the Antichrist make the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't really feel that way, but that's just kind of how people receive it. Let's do it.
Let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone. Classic album. Come to Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip-hop, music, and culture that happen throughout the week. Brought to you by the producers of this podcast over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. And if you are interested in becoming a producer or just learning about what a producer is, the link to our Patreon is in the description of this episode. Big shout out to I'm getting right into it, y'all. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, djbooth.net.com. Yeah. A couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Source, shout out to the sourcemagazine.com, XXL, all that good stuff. Let's get right into the business, though. For those of you who are like me, our prayers have been answered. Sci-Hi the Prince, after releasing a dope, no pun intended, dope, debut album, No Dope on Sundays, is finally coming out with a follow-up. He announced recently that the new album, entitled The Story of EGOT, the God of Rap, is back. I'm wondering if that's the whole title, because that seems kind of long. But nevertheless, a little bit of background on Sci-Hi the Prince, if you don't know, as far as my experience, and then you can go and Google him, right? But I discovered him when he did a mixtape called Black History. It was just dope, top to bottom, dope beats, lyrics, conscious lyrics, a little bit of gangster in it. It's sort of like, as a music fan and as a hip hop fan, when you just discover somebody new that just has an it factor with how they do what they do. And that was him. And he put out a follow-up mixtape, and then there was a little bit of time before we actually got the debut. I know he was messing with Kanye West, probably ghostwriting. I believe he was also on Good Music, Kanye's label. And then nothing for years. And now we have a follow-up album. I would suggest, if you've never heard of Sci-Hi the Prince, you just start where I started, right? And I'm only talking about 3 projects. Some people like to go to what's the latest, but honestly, I don't think you can go wrong. Sometimes when you start with what the latest is, you kind of miss what made them so revered to hip hop fans. But if you start with the Black History series, which I believe is only 2 of those, or at least start with 1 and 2, and then follow that up with his debut album, No Dope on Sundays, you'll know exactly what I mean, and you'll be ready for this new release. Because I'm telling you, I'm excited. And if this is dropping, well, let's see. Let's see when is this dropping? Because I'm pretty sure if you're a fan of Sci-Hi the Prince, and you already know, and you've already listened to the albums, your thought is, well, when is it dropping? So the name of the album is The Story of EGOT, and is releasing this summer via his own label, EGOT Records, which is a partnership with Empire. If you don't know, because I didn't mention this. He's from Georgia. He's pretty dope. Is this the album cover? Near-death experience. Oh, I forgot about that. That's the other thing. Sci-Hi the Prince is one of those types of rappers who are honest in his lyrics, sort of like Kanye West. That's why he's able to keep people, looking out for what he got next, because he's going to rap about what he feels and what's happening and not make anything up. And I feel like with Sci-Hi the Prince, given everything he's been through since that last album, he has a lot to say. And it's not just about that for me, because I don't even do that on this show, but I'm curious as to whether he can combine some dope beats, some dope bars, some dope concepts with some real stories. So this summer, y'all, 2022 is looking crazy. For those, just because I'm thinking about it, for those who don't know, and if you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here, because you already know it already happened. But for those that are in the now right now, Kendrick Lamar will be releasing his next album in about a week. And rumors are it's a double album. And it's supposed to be his last on TDE, and before he start doing things on his new label. I'm going to tell you like this. This is me as far as Kendrick Lamar goes. Kendrick Lamar hasn't put out a whack project yet, so I'm afraid. He's always taking time in between albums to release, but I think he was supposed to release sometime before the pandemic, maybe right when it happened, and it was delayed, basically. That's what I'm thinking. That's my thinking. I could be wrong. Maybe it took this long to produce his album. But I'm a little shook because the dude is, he's what, 5 for 5, I believe, if you're counting the Untitled Unmastered joint. He hasn't missed yet. And if you follow sports and you're a fan of, like I'm a fan of the Yankees, the expectation for a Yankees fan is always World Series. We forget the last time we won a World Series because we have so many championships. So it's always World Series. You can't tell a Yankees fan or a Lakers fan or even a Celtics fan that they didn't just win last year, because they don't remember. They look at every year as a year to get a chip. And I look at this with Kendrick Lamar, is that, can I really doubt him again after this long? But this is a double album. Not many double albums are great. I did a whole show on those that are great. And trust me, great is a strong language, because there's only a few that's great, and I could count them on one hand. So we shall see, but expect a review of that album from me, for sure. Speaking of another album, this album, people had to wait over 20 years to get a follow-up. Now, we talking about Sci-Hi the Prince only releasing an album maybe a couple years ago. Black Star has finally released their follow-up to their debut back in 1998 when they were on Raucous Records. They finally released a follow-up group album, Talib Kweli and the man formerly known as Mos Def, new name Yasin Bey. Whole album produced by Madlib. This should be a slam dunk. Now, access aside, if you don't know what the situation is, you can't just go to your streaming service and get it. You have to pay for its subscription to the Luminary platform, which is podcasting. I get deeper into that in a episode I did, or at least paying those kinds of things to access an album, on a bonus episode I just did for the Patreon supporters, the producers of this podcast. So if you would like to check that out and become a producer, visit patreon.com/hiphop now. But my impressions of the album is that I will say lower your expectations. this is not a review. This is just impressions, but going off my impression based off of a listen and a half is that if you are nostalgic for what Black Star's album was, their debut album as a group was in 1998, you need to pump your brakes. That doesn't mean that the album is bad. That just means if your expectation is more of that from 98, you're going to be disappointed. But if you follow the careers of Yasin Bey, aka Mos Def, or once known as Mos Def, and Talib Kweli, whether it's the solo careers or Reflection Eternal or whatever, if you follow their music over time and you hear this album, it sounds like where they would be as a group. They have grown as a group. Now, I still feel like, off the impression, that their debut is better. And maybe that's unfair because you're comparing two albums that are like 20 plus years, I think 24 years apart. That's just not going to work. You know what I'm saying? That's just not the way to do things. But you have to honestly listen to it for what it is and to, decide for yourself. Do you like it? They weren't as aggressive or hungry on this project because they don't have to be. They've released a ton of music over the years. So you're not going to get the same exact energy, but some of it is there. Some of it is there. Obviously, these dudes are older. Just think about it this way. Let's just hypothetically, I don't know what their ages were when this dropped. Let's just say they were both 19 or 20. Well, now you're adding 20 plus years to them. Different things have happened in their life. You know what I'm saying? There's either more kids or wives or divorces or a bunch of things have happened since then. Social media was not around when they dropped. I mean, it kind of was, right? Facebook, but on a low, but no one knew unless you were on a campus, something like that. But whatever. But nevertheless, you cannot expect what you used to get in 1998 when you hear this album. You can't even expect that kind of thing from Madlib on a production. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, off my impression, is that I think it's good. I think if you understand that this is not 1998, but this is still Yasin Bey, no disrespect. This is still Talib Kweli, and this is Madlib on the production. Your expectations should be about what have they done in recent years. And honestly, when you press play, you hear that. It's okay. It's cool. But I'm not excited. But those are my impressions of it. Will it make my top 5 of the year? I doubt it. But I also had doubts about Pusha T's album, and I listen to it every day. So there you go. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has announced its 2022 inductees. I shared the voting link on Twitter. If you don't know, I also have a Twitter community. So if you listen to this podcast or you've been listening for years or you just found me on Twitter, it's at Vegas World INC. And I have a community called Hip Hop Now. You can join it. It's open. You can share it with other hip hop heads. I post stories. I post podcast episodes, all kinds of things there. And I talk to people through that community. So shout out to Twitter for making that happen. But nevertheless, I shared the link for people to vote in my group. And I voted probably for the second time. Or the first time. I don't know. I think I've done it twice. But I felt compelled to vote this time because A Tribe Called Quest was a nominee. And I was like, I gotta get in there and vote for Tribe. I definitely wanted to vote for hip hop. We know it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's not all genres of music are getting inducted. It's more of the Music Hall of Fame, to be honest, at this point. It's just, they just keep the name. which should probably change. But nevertheless, A Tribe Called Quest did not make it. But hip hop is represented this year. Eminem has made it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's actually a no-brainer. I don't know how he's not already in there considering how big he has been. Knowing Eminem, he will take it as an opportunity to big up hip hop. Watch. And I'm not talking about just new cats. If he goes there at all, I'm talking about he tends, I mean, the dude wears t-shirts with album covers that he loves, some of which you never hear anybody talk about anymore, right? He had Naughty by Nature's first album on a shirt. He had Paris album on a shirt. You can expect that in some regard. Eminem was kind of a no-brainer, whether he was coming up this year or next year, whatever. We knew he was going to get in. But the other person that got in, that represents hip-hop in a way that you don't know. She's getting in for a number of things, but most importantly, us as hip-hop heads and those that benefit from it, still talking about hip-hop heads that sell records, Sylvia Robinson. If you don't know who Sylvia Robinson is, she is mostly known in hip-hop circles, those that know, the mother of hip-hop. Why? Rapper's Delight, The Message, Sugar Hill Records, her label. She wanted to capitalize off the scene of hip-hop, not in an industry way, and maybe in some ways, who knows, I don't know what the deals were, but nevertheless, she saw what was happening on the streets based off of, friends and stuff like that put her on, but she saw for her eyes enough to invest in it. And Rapper's Delight wasn't the first hip-hop record by a long shot, but it was the first successful hip-hop record. We know there was some biting and stuff going on, but also The Message. Those two records set the tone, set the course for where hip-hop would go as far as major recording artists. Not in the streets, not in the park jams, but for rappers to make records, singles to EPs to albums to what you have today. But it started with Sylvia Robinson believing that this could be huge if more people hear it. And she was right. So salute to her, salute to Eminem. Hopefully next year Tribe can get in, because in a lot of ways, I'm not feeling how when Phife died, a lot of people, as far as pop culture and exposure and news and media, everybody showed all this love for Tribe. And I'm not saying they should have won the Grammy that year, but I felt like, them performing there, they should have been something that, but whatever. But I feel like when Phife died, all that, exposure to A Tribe Called Quest showed me how many people grew up with them and how influential they are, and how you saw it across different walks of life, right? If you see a weatherman or a senator or whoever, quoting these lyrics, this is the future I envisioned for hip hop, right? Not that I'm like some kind of hip hop guru, but I'm saying I always looked at it like I'm a kid now. Hip hop is dope. It's getting better. At some point, there will be a president of the United States, you know what I'm saying? Just adults who grew up on this music, on my era, on the era before me, in the 80s and stuff like that. So I'm kind of hoping, a Tribe Called Quest really gets their flowers, It felt like we were giving them their flowers because Phife died, they had a new album, and it was like a moment. But I think they need another moment, right? Q-Tip's still here with us, right? Can't just be all Kennedy Center stuff, I'm saying. Get into some other stories. Hit Boy is aiming to help next generation of producers with beat exchange, marketplace. Now, I know I saw this on, I'm not going to get too far into it, but I saw this on Instagram originally. And but I'm reading this from hiphopdx.com, so you can go there, show them some love, read the whole article, because I'm not going to read the whole thing. But here is the first paragraph. Acclaimed music director United Masters announced the launch of Beat Exchange on Thursday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, a special marketplace to buy and distribute instrumentals. And Hit Boy has signed on to supply some beats to young artists. This is pretty dope. I would like to see the terms, because that's just me. But that should be you if you're thinking about it. But I would prefer to see the terms of stuff like this, because it always sounds good in the beginning. And I'm not trying to be skeptical. I'm not saying it's wrong. And I know there's a business end to this in some shape or fashion, or who knows, maybe it's just a thing and there's some stuff on the back end so they could do this thing. But nevertheless, I just would hate to see a marketplace where people could possibly be taken advantage of. Because we're in a different world with social media and websites. I mean, there was a time a couple of years ago where, I would go to certain websites that were all about beats. All about beats. You could trade beats, you could buy beats, you could use them for free. I mean, SoundCloud was a place like that too. So this is interesting. And I wonder if it's just a more organized, controlled environment so you could actually get to the business at hand. The problem with that is there's a lot of dudes who are whack, who make whack beats or steal beats or really don't have any real skill, but who cares, right? As long as the beat's dope, who gives a shit? Oh, did I curse on this show? I did. Apologies. Death Row Records First Lady Jewel has reportedly died. Now, if you don't know who that is, or maybe the name doesn't ring a bell, maybe it does for you. It wasn't just Nate Dogg singing on those hooks back in the heyday of Death Row. Jewel was also known to be a part of that as far as one of the crooners. Unfortunately, never really blew up on Death Row, but that's a whole nother story. But nevertheless, it's just sad to hear. So rest in peace to Jewel. Also, rest in peace to DJ K Slay. I didn't get a chance to say that on this podcast because I posted a bonus episode. But rest in peace to the both of them, man, because it's just always sad to see and to hear and to learn that some of these people who you rock with, because maybe they made a song that you love, or maybe you love the hook she sang, or whatever, or maybe in recent years you watched an interview or two and got into what she was doing or where she was in her life. We got to give people their flowers, man, while they're here, man. We have to. And lastly, Lil Wayne appeared on a podcast, a sports podcast, Fox Sports. I'm not going to name it because so what? But he was asked to name his top 5 as far as rappers go. And he started, because you can go listen and look it up and all that to find out who the 5 is, but he started at the top and he put up the number 1 finger. Missy Elliott. Now, and obviously, this got around to Missy, and, she showed a lot of love with what she typed on Twitter, Instagram, and all of that. But what was most interesting to me is that I've been saying this for a while, and it's not like it's any information I know or I figured out or anything like that. But I'll never forget, back in the days, watching BET, Cash Money is on there. They just started getting hot, right? Bling Bling is out and all that good stuff. And I remember, I forget who was interviewing them, but the host said, as far as like who's your influence or whatever, or your favorite rapper or whatever. And I'll never forget Lil Wayne saying Missy, because that's just what you didn't expect to hear. And Missy was hot at that time. And I guess I chalked it up to that. That's who I like at the moment. Because you never know, right? Rappers say a bunch of different things, right? They're usually hesitant to say or to answer questions like, who's your top 5 and stuff like that. Because they know the reactions and blah, 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 especially today. But that was years ago. That was late 90s when he said that. And over the years, every now and again, he's reminded you. Now, some will say, like, I don't see it. How can Lil Wayne be so, inspired by Missy to call her the best rapper alive? Well, if you go back to those Cash Money days, Lil Wayne didn't rhyme the way he rhymes now. He was a lot like Missy. I'm talking about the flows, the sound effects, all of it. He said in that BET interview back then that that's what he liked about her. He really liked that about her. And I thought that was so dope because I was like, wow, you don't really hear that. Well, what's surprising but not surprising is that when he was asked on this podcast that he mentioned Missy, well, everybody reacted again. What? That's right. Lil Wayne says Missy is the best rapper alive? In his opinion? Well, yeah, because he's been saying it for years. And Missy even said it. He's been consistent. He always says my name. I appreciate it typically when it's a male MC and they talk about influences or who their favorite rapper is. It's almost never. I want to say never, but I don't know who's ever said anything. But when it comes to artists as big as somebody like Lil Wayne, well, like Missy said, never a female MC. Never. But Lil Wayne has been keeping that same energy since the Cash Money early days. So salute to him for being honest, being consistent, being himself. Because we know today in hip hop, whether you older, younger, hardcore, trap, whatever, these cats are no different from an NBA player. Or like a Kyrie Irving, right? Where you see like, yeah, you were mad at that fan. I wasn't mad. It's like, Kyrie, you put 2 middle fingers up. I wasn't mad. Like when they think we're stupid, it's refreshing to see someone who's just honest and been honest, and you can't tell him anything else because that's who he likes. And that's his top 5. So it was just a great display to see, especially now. And he didn't do it because it's cool to big up women. He did it because he's been saying it since before the Me Too movement, since before social media got popping. I know Facebook was around, all that good stuff, but shut up. You know what I'm saying? It's just dope to see that same energy, and especially for Missy to still be here with us and receive those flowers. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at VegasWorldINC. And please know that this podcast, Hip Hop Now Podcast, is available wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that subscribe button, like it, comment, review it, but most importantly, share it with people you know enjoy this kind of content. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace.